Hey guys, if you have been married for any amount of time, you know it's just a matter of time before disagreements arise. Sometimes we think as Christians, if we love Jesus, then we're not going to disagree with our spouse. And that's just not realistic. We're two completely different people with two completely different backgrounds and upbringings, and we're trying to bring all that under one roof. And sometimes, unfortunately, we kind of just mix a little more like oil and water. And so there are lots of things that we disagree on, some small, like where does the butter go on the counter or in the fridge. Some of them are big, like should we have kids or how many kids are we supposed to have? And so what I hope to do is take us to the Bible. We're going to see what God's Word has to say, and we're going to apply some of these principles to disagreements. And what we're going to do is we're going to go right to the book of Proverbs, which is the book of wisdom. And we're going to see what kind of wisdom we can gain from that that'll help in this realm of navigating through disagreements with our spouse. But before we go to Proverbs, I want to address one thing. A couple weeks ago, we talked about like a biblical framework for marriage, and we looked at Ephesians 5. And in there, it gave some instructions for wives. I'm just going to recap those real fast. So in Ephesians 5, verse 22, it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord." And then in verse 33, it says, "The wife must respect her husband." Now, I want to address really fast just that issue of submission. Submission does not mean that you have to just say okay to whatever your husband says. If your husband is asking you to sin, or if he's even just asking you to do something that you really feel uncomfortable with or really feel badly about, you do not just have to say yes. That is not what submission means. If you find yourself in a situation like that, I would encourage you to get a third party involved, maybe a pastor of your church or maybe a counselor that can help you guys navigate through that, again, in a God-honoring way. For the rest of us, though, most of our disagreements with our husband are not towing the line of sin. It's just we have one perspective on something, they have another perspective on something, and most of the time we're just unwilling to change our perspective. We're unwilling to just give up what we think is right and just go with what our husband thinks. And so when we find ourselves in a disagreement, here are three things that I think we can do, again, from the book of Proverbs. We're going to be in chapter 18 this whole time. So what we're going to do is start off with verse 2. So this is Proverbs chapter 18, verse 2. It says, "A fool finds no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing his own opinions." Again, one more time. A fool finds no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing his own opinions. Whenever we are in a disagreement, it's because we have a perspective, we have an opinion, and the other person has an opinion as well. And they're just not in agreement. And the most foolish thing we can do is continue to push and push and push our opinion without seeking to understand their opinion. So my first step for you guys when you find yourselves in a disagreement with your husband is seek to understand his point of view. I can assure you, not very many things will water down your heated fight like saying, "You know what? Tell me why you think that. I really want to understand your perspective." And say it sincerely, not like because you want him to then ask for your perspective, but just really seek to understand his perspective. His perspective may be better than yours. But unless you try to figure out why he's has the perspective that he has, you'll never know. And I would even go a step farther. Sometimes there's a bigger issue underlying the issue that is the core of our disagreement. And if we start to seek to understand our husband's perspective, a lot of times we'll dig deep enough to get to the bigger issue. So there you go. Step one, seek to understand your husband's point of view. Now we're going to go a little bit further into chapter 18 of Proverbs. Verse 19 says this: an offended brother is more unyielding than a fortified city. If you are in a disagreement with your husband and you start lashing out, like you bring in things that happened a long time ago and you start questioning his character and all sorts of different things, you will offend him. And that is a surefire way to not get him to listen to your side and your point of view at all. Again, an offended brother is more unyielding than a fortified city. So, step 2, when you find yourself in a disagreement with your husband, do not be rude. Don't be rude. It's not going to help the situation. It's not going to cause your disagreement to be anything more than just a bigger disagreement. And so don't be rude. Watch your words. The last thing I want to talk about is in verse 21, and that kind of takes this idea of not being rude to another level. So again, Proverbs 18, now we're in verse 21, it says, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So not only do we not want to be rude, but we want to speak life into the disagreement. So when you've done step 1, you've asked for your husband's perspective. When he's given it, you haven't said, oh my gosh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, right? You've not been rude. Take it a step further and affirm his perspective. Wow, you know what? I never thought about it like that. That's a good point. If you don't think it's a good point, don't lie, but maybe try to find something in there that was good or something that you can agree on. Affirm that, because listen, you guys, again, your tongue, your words have the power of life or death. And whatever you use your words for, you're going to eat that fruit. You're going to reap the benefit of whatever has come out of your mouth. So if you're speaking life into the disagreement, I can assure you life will come out of the disagreement. If you're speaking harsh words, disrespectful words, mean, just rude things into the disagreement, you're going to reap that. You're not going to cause an agreement to happen. You're not going to cause anything but more fight. And so those are the 3 things that we can get from Proverbs, which is the most important. The most important thing, you guys, is always going to God's word to figure out how to deal with your situation, because God, the creator of all of us, the manufacturer of marriage, I think he's the one that has the best perspective on how to handle things. So always, always, always go to God's word to figure out how you should handle things, especially when it comes to disagreements with your spouse. Now, you guys, I cannot guarantee you that when you follow these steps that all of your disagreements will go away and all your disagreements will turn into agreements. But I would dare to say that if you are willing to do the hard thing, to follow these simple steps, they will cause your disagreements to at least come to the level of conversation. And conversation has more of a chance of turning into an actual agreement in the end. And so I just want to encourage you with that. And then I want to leave you with a quote from the book I've been reading this month, Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas. He says in his book, we can't control how our spouse will act or even how the world will act, but we can control how we will act and how we will respond. And when we are in a disagreement with our spouse, we have 2 choices. We can respond how we want to, or we can respond how God would want us to. And I want to challenge all of us, you and me included, because I need to hear this just as much as any of us do. I want to challenge us all to always choose the God-honoring response. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. You guys have a great week. I love you so much. I'll see you next week.